Hello friends! With the Procreate 5.4 update, there are now even more incredible default brushes to choose from, and we're going to explore some of them. In this video, I'm going to test Gagebrook. To find this brush, open up the new Procreate library, go to the watercolor set, and find Gagebrook. I haven't made any changes to this brush in the Brush Studio. I'll be using it exactly as it was installed. And I have my canvas set to 3000 pixels square at 300 dpi. As usual, if you're wondering why that's important, you can watch this linked video. For this test, I'll be using a textured paper background, and I'll leave a link in the description for where to find this free download. When you import the paper texture, just remember to keep it at the top of your layer stack, and also remember to change the blending mode to multiply. Let's take a look at the brush behaviors. As usual, I'm going to test a small, medium, and large stroke. This brush gives you a nice clean stroke at the smallest size. At the medium size, you start to see some shifts in value and some really nice soft edges. And at the largest size, it looks like this stroke was made with a really nice wet brush, but it's not streaky at all. There's some really nice natural shifts in value, but it's still really nice and smooth. There is some pressure sensitivity here. With light pressure, it looks like you're working with a really wet brush. And as you apply more pressure, it gets a little bit more solid. I'm realizing that this brush does a great job of mimicking watered down pigment because I'm using a really vibrant red here, but it looks really, really soft with this brush. Just as a side-by-side comparison, this is the same red, but here I'm using a really solid inking brush. So you can definitely see how the watercolor brush is creating a much softer version of the color. Okay, let's do a quick swatch test. And as you'd expect, it's a low opacity brush, so it's quite transparent. But surprisingly, you can still get full coverage with just a couple strokes. And if I change my grip to use the side of the pencil, it will give me a really light wash. Now let's see what the smudge tool does. I'm just going to long press so that it switches to Gagebrook. Oh, it blends really well, actually. Especially when you're using the smudge tool at a large size. So I'm sure you can get some really nice smooth gradients with this. And actually, if you blend into the color, it will actually remove some of that color. If you go back and forth, it does get a little more streaky as the color shifts directions. Okay, let's paint something and see how it performs. First, I'm going to do a quick sketch of a little cluster of cherries. Okay, now let's see if I can make this look like a watercolor painting. I kept my pencil down the entire time I outlined and filled these shapes because I wanted to try to get this first layer of color to look relatively flat. But in hindsight, I think it actually might have been more realistic to allow the strokes to overlap and darken in some areas to create more variation in value. Here I'm just adding a darker color for where all the areas of shadow will be. Now I'm using the brush with the smudge tool to just soften those edges and blend those areas. Even though the brush is low opacity, it's really just semi-transparent. So this bright orange is actually showing up quite well on top of the deep red. And even this really light cream color is showing up well. So that's a plus. All right, let me do some blending here. It's highly possible that I might be over blending this. I don't know. I'm still new to this watercolor thing, but we'll see how it goes. I've got the smudge tool set to a pretty large size and it's blending really smoothly. I've dropped the brush size down quite a bit to outline and fill these stems, then add a line of shadow. Then I can go in with the smudge tool to soften those edges. I love that this brush works really well at a small size too. It makes it easy to add all of these little details. Using that same technique here of keeping my brush down to outline and fill the leaves. But next time around, I think I might experiment with different ways to paint these larger shapes. Just adding a darker green here so the leaves don't look so flat. And I'll add a more vibrant green as well. If you use a light touch when this brush is at a small size like this, it'll give you some really lovely, delicate lines. And finally, a little shadow to finish this off. Okay, so it's really not even fair to compare this brush to the only watercolor brush from the classic library because, my goodness, that one was not good. This brush is in a different league entirely. This is a major upgrade. I'm not a watercolor artist by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like this brush made it easy to achieve a similar look. Obviously, it's not a perfect replica. We don't get the beautiful pigment pooling and colors bleeding into one another like traditional watercolor, but I think it still does a really good job. My only critique is that I wish it was maybe a tiny bit more transparent, but other than that, I think it's great. Highly recommend. What do you think? Have any of you guys tried it yet? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you'd like to see more from this brush review series, there's a link to the playlist in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd love if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.